Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mosaic podcast. There are times on this show that really excite me because I get to meet people that I really don't know and that I have the opportunity to meet them along with you. Now, my guest today and I have had one conversation, um, and there's something about her that just really, I'm trying to think of the right word. Excites gives connotations of something different than what I mean to say. But there's a brilliance to her mind and the way she sees things and an integrity to her soul that really that really inspires me and touches me. And it was my honor to just somehow stumble upon her and to have a conversation with her and for her to say that she wanted to be on. And I believe, I spent a lot of years at Hay House discovering people. And I helped Hay House grow from a $3 million company to a $100 million company. And one of the things that I did is I found raw talent that people didn't know about. I believe Wendy could be one of those people that actually is in the place where discoverability is what's happening now. And she is stumbling, my words, not hers. She's stumbling into this place a little bit uncomfortably because it feels right for her inside, but almost outside that doesn't feel right for her in one way. She's putting together some of those pieces. Again, this is all my words. She can tell me that I'm full of it when she comes on. But let me tell you a little bit about who she is. Wendy May is a published author. She has an audio book that is just about completed that will be coming out soon. And she's a purpose-led entrepreneur, a conscious business coach, a former corporate climber. I love that. And a recovering achievement addict. I love that too. She did all the things she was supposed to do to become the successful person that everybody wanted her to be and that she wanted to be. She's a Harvard alumni. She has graduated, has a graduate business degree from UCLA. And she spent 15 years in corporate leadership and organizational consulting. But when she got there, something didn't feel right. She felt exhausted and strangely empty. And we've had people on that story she's not the only one that's felt that story somewhere. But there's a lot that went into making her a certain person. And I love those pivot points where people decide their happiness is more important than the career path that they set for themselves. And in the opening chapter of her book, Regenerative Purpose, she shares the details of how she started on her own purpose-driven journey. To make these big changes, she had to starve the ego and feed the soul. I want to unpack that with her a little bit also. She had to let go of old goals and old identities and redefine her concept of success and learn entirely new ways of being and leading in this world. Remember, she's a Harvard grad, so imagine what's put on her shoulders. Now she's here to serve as a purpose path guide and a process holder. She works with individuals and organizations who have a deep desire to participate in the co-creation of a new paradigm by saying yes to purpose, and not just any purpose, but the regenerative sort of purpose that is dynamic, interdependent, and cyclical in nature. You can find out more about Wendy and get her book, Regenerative Purpose, through her website, which is regenerativepurpose.com. But before you have the whole podcast with me speaking about who she is and never getting a chance to meet her, I want to introduce Wendy May. Wendy May, welcome to the Mosaic podcast.
Thank you. It was the most epic introduction ever.
Yeah, it was like, when is this guy going to shut up? So, she said that she didn't want this to be a performance. And I don't want to set up that performance by giving that introduction. So really what I want to just let you know is that's who's sitting in front of you. And now there's really no need to perform. There's really no need to do anything. There's really just the beauty of what happens in this podcast is we just show up and talk to each other. And so, can you give me a sense, just to get a sense of where you entered the world from? What did your parents do as you were growing up?
My parents were both analytical chemists. So I was the black sheep of the family in the sense that I was the only one who liked humans. My dad and my brother all work in labs and they're scientists and immigrants. So I was a first generation American born Chinese
Wow.
and grew up in Indiana. Um, yeah, where
Wow.
there were not a lot of Asian people in the 80s when I grew up. So
So did they get jobs with university? Is that how Indiana, how did you end up out of all places in the world in Indiana?
yeah, both my parents went to graduate school at Purdue University in Lafayette, Indiana. So we ended up there because my mom got a job and my dad started a company. So yeah, Indiana.
And so when did you realize that you were not like them, that you were the black sheep, that you liked people and they liked chemistry or chemical, whatever it is that they liked?
Probably in college. Of course, being Asian, the dream is, you want your kids to be pre-med. So I
Yeah.
went to Harvard, which was check. Okay, that was like fulfilling one of my parents' dreams. But then I got there and I was in probably freshman year biology class. And I was like, I'm not really that into biology and chemistry. So I switched. I couldn't quite switch to psychology because in my parents' view, that would probably be super useless. So I switched to something called biological anthropology, which has a lot of psychology and sociology baked into it, but a little bit stealth because it was still biological something something. So it sort of, it it satisfied my parents' need to think that I was doing something useful with my life and satisfied my need to want to explore more of the human condition.
So before we go any further, there's some sounds that people might be hearing that are coming from where Wendy is. Why don't you tell us where this, because we're certainly not in Indiana anymore, right? Where are you
Now,
now?
I now live on an island in the south of Thailand called Koh Phangan. So this is, yeah, part of what's made it possible for me to really pursue purpose work in the sense that I've released myself from a lot of the trappings of modern life in terms of, paying very high rent in San Francisco as I was doing before. So yeah, I have an amazing quality of life here close to nature. So some of what you're hearing in the background is the sounds of nature, insects and yeah, maybe dogs, maybe cicadas.
So was that hard for you to acclimate to, or did you just go there and feel like, oh boy, this is fabulous? I mean, going from the streets of San Francisco with culture and all the things that exist that are both good and bad into
Yeah.
into the jungles of Thailand.
Well, it was a gradual process. I mean, first, when I quit my corporate job, I was traveling for a few years to being quite nomadic and moving around, living out of a backpack. And I only in the last 2 years started to really root here. Part of it was because I was writing the book and I needed to have a stable home base. And also, I just sort of fell in love with the place. But it wasn't, I don't know, like when you look backwards at someone else's life choices, sometimes it seems like it's very, like you flip a switch.
Yeah.
But in my lived reality, it was much more of a gradual process to realize that, this was sort of where I feel home, where I feel belonging, where I have community. And leaving the city was not difficult for me, actually. I think my nervous system was so overwrought that coming to a place where nature is around all the time was super healing for me.
So what I always like to do is try and ask the audience to put themselves in the shoes of the person that's talking. And so I bet there are people that are in the middle of big cities
Yeah,
whose nervous systems are getting fried,
yeah,
but they don't even know what that really means. Can you dive down and talk about what a fried nervous system looked like for you? How did that show up in you?
yeah. I mean, it's funny because at the time, I don't even think I had the capability to recognize that that's what it was. Um, but I can remember feeling kind of like this baseline level of tiredness all the time. And yeah, just a sense of being busy. Not that life was full with like rich, meaningful, deep, nourishing experiences, but just more that my life was busy, that I was constantly uh, kind of a slave to my calendar, right? There was always like one thing after another, after another, after another. My entire life was totally scheduled. I was working sometimes, 12 to 16-hour days through the weekend, never really off, and never really fully relaxed. Always kind of in this slight anxiety about something that I needed to do or something I needed to complete or something that wasn't good enough. This idea that it's just it's kind of like a feeling of shallow breathing and slight contraction in the body. And yeah, like I said, at the time, I didn't even know how to recognize those things in myself. So,
And I love your level of honesty there, because it was that feeling of at the time that you didn't even notice that that's what was going on,
yeah.
that I heard somehow the voices of the people listening, sort of wondering, what the heck is it? Do I wonder if that's what I have? Because look at what's going on in the world. Look how stressed out a lot of us are. Look at that level. So was it a courageous moment, or was it just like an unavoidable moment that made you say, I just can't do this anymore?
It was a little bit of both. Um, yeah, like I said before, it's sort of like on the outside, it looks like a very sudden decision. Like we have this rhetoric around taking a leap and, just jump over the cliff kind of thing.
Right.
But it was something that was wearing away at me for years. And there was a accumulation of experiences and moments where I had the insight of, I don't think this is really what I want to be doing with my life. Um, and then the pain became so acute that it did become what I call a choiceless choice.
Yeah.
Sort of I felt like I was dying where I was. And so it wasn't really like, it was a choice to live, basically. It was sort of like, well, I can continue to wither away here, but this is not a life. And so if I choose to live, in a way, I didn't have any other option but to leave, even though I had no idea where I was going. And
Yeah.
that's the courageous part, right? The going into the uncertainty. There was the certainty of I need to leave, but total uncertainty in terms of where I'm going. Just, I need to get out of here. That's the only thing I knew.
And did you have support anywhere around you? Because I can't imagine your parents who helped you get through Harvard and UCLA grad school and business school and corporate jobs saying, "Oh, great, Wendy, you're now going to give that all up and go somewhere to a jungle." Like, how did that play out?
Yeah, it's interesting what happens because when I made the decision to leave my job, I started traveling. So I sort of, I guess, eased my family and community into it by letting them think it was temporary. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm just going to take a year off and then I'll be back to quote unquote normal life.
Right.
And so that 1 year has turned into 3, into 5, into 6. And so now it's apparent to everyone I'm not going back.
Right. Right.
Um, but also, just on a personal note, a few months after I started traveling, my dad actually got sick and passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yeah, I would say I'm sorry, but actually I feel like it was supportive in a way because it was this very like I guess unpolitically correct to say, but it was I think a relief for him because of what he was struggling with in his life, and also it was a relief for me because probably one of the biggest barriers to me leaving this achievement ladder that I was climbing was my dad's, sort of whatever I projected onto him, his expectations and hopes and dreams for me. So in a way, his passing, very coincidentally or cosmically timed with my leaving corporate, helped me to make that transition with sort of less resistance, from the family structure.
There's so many things that you say that I relate to from a personal level, and I just want to share a couple of them just because um, we haven't spoken much and we don't know each other that much. But I lost my dad when I was 13 years old, and I lost my mom 2 years later on the same day when I was 15. So at the age of 15, I didn't have a mother and father, and so I felt a little bit like odd and strange. I was tested as this genius IQ, and there was so many high hopes for us, and I grew up in a lower middle class family. But when my parents passed away, as traumatic and bad as that situation was, and it literally tore me apart because my dad was my hero. My mom's sister married a household name. And so I suddenly moved from the East Coast of the United States into the Midwest and was part of an elite family of America. And the world that I ended up seeing was completely different. And he said, I'm watching you and I want to watch you. And I see that I can mentor you to take over my chair. In 10 years, you'll be sitting where I'm sitting and I will mentor you every step of the way. We're going to start today by pushing a broom. And I said, you've watched me for a few months and I so appreciate that offer. And I just want to watch you for a year before I pick up the broom. I just want to see if what you're offering me is who I want to be, because I just lost my mom and dad. And that's the nicest thing you could ever do. And so I ended up not following in his footsteps. I ended up walking away from $1 billion company, running $1 billion company, or growing to run $1 billion company. And I hitchhiked around the world, and people thought I was, absolutely bat crazy. Even today, like my aunt says, you can't. I heard you once say the name of our family, and I don't want you saying that because yet you're using that to better yourself. I said to her, quite frankly, anybody who hears the name of your family and the decision I made thinks I'm an even bigger idiot than I am. So it wouldn't be to better myself. So I know some of that feeling of loss and gain and freedom, and partly because my parents weren't around, I was an arrogant little kid, and I could say to them, "Well, you're not my folks. You're not my parents." So I made my own decisions, and yet I guess the question I have is there's an emptiness there. Did you feel any guilt or remorse that you weren't with him when he passed, or were you with him when he passed, or how did that turn out for you?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I wasn't there. I did speak to him through sort of a psychic medium after he passed, and actually had probably the most honest conversation that I could have had with him that wasn't possible when he was still alive and in his body. So I feel really at peace with that. And I know there's a lot of things in me that are learned from watching my dad. He was an entrepreneur. He also sort of bucked authority and sort of had this rebellious nature of going against the grain. And he was an immigrant, so he faced a lot of racism, owning and running a business in Indiana in the 80s. So
Wow.
there's a little bit of this in me, which I totally cherish. That's something that I got that transmission from him. And with my mom, we're good. My mom and I actually run a small business together. She's retired. She was doing childcare for my nieces for a while, but they're now old enough that they're going to school and daycare. But my mom and I run a biodegradable glitter business together. So
Oh,
she's a
wow.
retired chemist. So she's very good with the details and very like minute measurements and operational stuff that is not my thing, right? And I do the marketing and the social media and the website. And my mom is at home in California mixing the glitter according to the formulas that I give her and shipping out things. And yeah, so we work together now. My mom and I are friends. So
Love that. How cool is that?
yeah.
Um, what's been the saddest moment of all of that for you?
I don't feel sad about it actually. I think that I don't know, the way that I see it is that all of these painful experiences are ultimately for our benefit. I talk about this in the book. I love acronyms. So if you get to know me, you'll learn this about me. So in the book, I have an acronym for PAIN, which I call personally activating information. So there's something around our unique sensitivity to the world, the way that our filter to reality works, that's unique to us, and that we feel certain things or are sensitive to certain things. And that actually is one of the things that helps guide us to being aligned with purpose. So I see, that not everything in life is pleasant or pleasurable,
Right.
but that ultimately they're all in service of something. So yeah, I did feel pain in losing my dad, but the benefit is that it brought me a lot closer to my mom. You
Yeah.
know, we also had some really honest conversations after my dad passed away, and you know, it changed our relationship from being mother-daughter to being peers and to being colleagues even.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a really good relationship now. So there's no, yeah, there's no, at this point at least, looking back, there's no sadness.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like for people who listen to the podcast to do is to just see perspective points and how different ways of seeing the world allow you to create to live in a world that's a different world than some people live in. And just what Wendy just said about there being pain, not everything is pleasurable, but seeing and somehow understanding this pain is something that moves you towards something else, or there opens up something else for you. It really opens up something that a lot of people would not see and get stuck in. um, what's been the happiest moment of your life?
It's so funny. I really struggle with these superlatives because I don't know that.
And I've never asked these questions to anybody else, so I must know that you struggle with them. Because and let me tell you why I'm asking it.
Yeah.
Because you're so brilliant that somehow when it comes across it comes across a little bit without emotion.
Mm,
And I'm purposely somehow without, I don't even realize it, but when you said it, and I wonder, why am I asking these questions? It's sort of, I wanted you to feel, I want people to feel you,
yeah.
because you're not just this big brain, you're this beautiful heart. In my conversations with you, I felt this beautiful heart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what comes to mind, I guess it's not necessarily happiest because I feel like I don't know, you don't want to choose among your children kind of thing. I have many happy moments that I can recall, um, but the most recent one that comes to mind is earlier this week. I had a belated birthday celebration, and you know, we've been
Happy,
in lockdown.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, so it was a little bit delayed because we've been in lockdown here, like many places in the world. So most things have been closed. And, you know, I was privileged enough to be able to have access to have a private gathering at a sauna here on the island where I live. Just 10 people. And this sauna is out in the jungle in the middle of nature. And I invited, actually, it was 11 women total, all sisters. And we had just a beautiful, beautiful night under the stars, singing and dancing and, you know, steaming and scrubbing. And I had a moment where everyone was standing around me, just calling my name and speaking just sweet things to me, like, I guess affirmations, but just like expressions of appreciation. And it was really touching. So simple, you know, so simple just to come together in community and feel this like togetherness and like love. And I think something about it was super precious because of the fact that we've been isolated for 2 months.
Yeah.
This, for many of us, was the first time we've been in a group of more than 2 people for 2 months. So it was like, wow, I felt such an immense feeling of gratitude. Wow, that I can be in a sauna, that I can be, you know, experiencing touch and sound healing. The guy who owns the place did a sound healing for all of us. We're just laying on the earth and like receiving these vibrations. And it was just so beautiful, like laying on the ground, looking at the stars, surrounded by my closest friends and feeling the preciousness of that. Maybe partly because we've been deprived, right, of this kind
Yeah.
of basic human contact. And then this is the first experience that I've had in 2 months of really being in that close container. So I don't know that I would call it the happiest moment of my life, but it was
As you
certainly
sit there with tears trying down from your, no, but no, I get it, because it's really, I mean, I've done a lot of traveling and I've been with a lot of different people. It doesn't matter how rich or poor, how educated or not educated, what religion or border, it doesn't matter. What I realize is everybody wants the same basic thing. They want to be loved and accepted. They want to be listened to and heard, and they want to be acknowledged, validated and acknowledged. And when you're in a circle of people made all the more distant by this beautiful coronavirus that is isolating us, and all of a sudden you come together, why wouldn't that be something that would be as moving as that is? So where did the idea for your book come into play?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't really know. um, what I do know is that it's not my idea, right? Because I see that pieces of this information or different versions of this information are coming through lots of different messengers and lots of different channels at this time. So the way that I understand it is that it's universal wisdom that's really needed in this time that is basically finding its way through different people with different voices and putting different words around it and packaging it into something that can be received in 3D. I think that for me, the process of writing the book started when I had this moment of the void, like where, you talk about the emptiness and the nothingness and stuff like that in spiritual traditions. And for me, this happened in August of 2018 when I found myself for the first time really fully unemployed, right? Like, because I had left my corporate job, but I had still coaching clients and I still had some income. I had, things that I was doing, projects, consulting. So I still had stuff, but then
Yeah.
August of 2018 was right around the time of the eclipse that happened that year. I found myself with a retreat that had been canceled, and for the first time ever, 0 clients, 0. So my last client sort of quit, or like I like to say, graduated
Right.
at that time. And I found myself with this just empty space. And around the same time, I got a messenger angel who came to me, someone I went to business school with, who follows me on Instagram, she came in and she invited me. So I don't know if probably human design. So I'm a projector.
Yes.
So I need to be invited. And so this woman, she was the invitation. She came to me and she messaged me on Instagram and said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And at that moment, or a moment before that moment, the answer was no. That would never occur to me to write a book. Like, why would I write a book?
Right.
Even though I've been a writer my whole life, it's just something that never occurred to me. But she brought this idea and she brought this invitation into my awareness. And I had a lot of resistance to it. I was like, why would I write a book? I'm not going to make any money doing that. I'm not good at that. I'll probably fail at it. I don't have the support for it. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I had all these attachments to the things that I had been doing that resisted becoming a book writer. But then, how things kind of like drop in and then they just keep poking you, and this is what happened with the book, is that I was like, no, this is like a crazy idea. I'm not doing that. And then it kept poking me, through different interactions like this, synchronicities and meetings with people. I kept suddenly noticing that I was meeting people who had written books or who were publishers or who were writing coaches, or, all of this became my world. And so it just was like the universe was sort of screaming at me, like, you need to write a book.
Right.
And then I said, okay, I'll do it. And I made a commitment to the book, this unborn entity, say, I'm going to give you a year of my life. Do what you will do with that space, but I'm going to commit to you for the next year of my life. I'm not going to allow anything else to come in. I'm not going to take on any clients. I'm not going to look for projects. I'm going to basically relax into living off of my savings and not having any income. And I will devote the next year of my life to serving you, the book, whatever wants to come through. And then, it sort of took off from there, right? Like, so once I made that commitment and I said, hey, book, I'm available for you. I'm here for you. Do your thing. I'm just going to be a channel and be a vehicle for you to be manifest in the world. Then I started getting all these, just more and more support is all I can say. Like, all of the people and the resources and the information that I needed to actually do the book came to me, just sort of, I don't know, a bit by magic it felt like, but for sure with my intention and taking action, and being committed, so it sort of
So
unfolded.
let me try and get another pivot point, because I love those pivot points.
Yeah.
First of all, is your nature to say no, 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 and until you hear something well enough to say yes? Is that
No, but this is part of the achievement addict thing where I don't like to say yes to things unless I'm sure I'll be good at it.
okay? Okay, so
I, I quit piano when I was 12 years old because I didn't want to practice because it was like too hard for me. You know, so this is part of sort of being high achiever, right? So like as a kid, a lot of things came easy to me. And yeah, it's a bit of this like growth mindset, fixed mindset thing, right? So like I had to learn growth mindset of really understanding, like, even if I don't know how to do something or I haven't done it before, that I can teach myself and that I can learn, and that there's this responsiveness and resilience in my system, that I don't have to be stuck to the thing that I know that I'm good at already. But for sure, there's deep conditioning in me that's like, I'm not sure I want to take that on unless I know that I'm going to be quote unquote successful at it. So this is
where,
a little bit what you mentioned in the introduction about redefining what success means, right?
yeah,
So
where did that first show up? Was that all the way through your life? Was it in Harvard? Was it all the way? Is it still exists now in what you're doing? That sense of because and the place that I really want to sort of inspect right now is this beautiful phrase that you have of being a recovering achievement addict, right? Because
yeah,
I think there are a lot of people in the achievement addict syndrome that may not be recovering, and that
yeah,
just are driven by the sense of achieving something and being good. And if they don't feel like they can do it, if they don't feel good enough, they run away from it, and they don't even try it. When if they would just try it, they're so intelligent and so good at anything they put their mind to. My stepson's like that. He's brilliant, but he just doesn't want to put the energy into certain things because he thinks, why? I want to be the best at it. If I can't be the best, it's not worth it. And
yeah,
he walks away from things that are absolutely, he can achieve anything he wants and be the best at it if he would just go through it. So I want to sort of burrow down into that place for a minute of
yeah.
what that is and how you recognize that. And let's stop there, and then I want to take it the next step.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why it's recovering achievement addict and not recovered
Right.
achievement addict. That's very intentional. I think anybody who's ever been an addict of anything knows that once you're an addict, you're always susceptible to relapse, right?
Yeah.
So there's a part of you that's likes that feeling of being an achiever and being quote unquote successful. So that's it's always there. You can be aware of it and maybe not go there, manage it, or have some distance from it. But I think that probably it's always going to be there. It's much lighter now than it used to be, for sure, because I have taken a bunch of steps out of this expectations, roles, obligations, and old thinking around success. But will I ever be 100% free from it? I don't think so. Probably
Right.
not. But it's just something for me to be mindful of, to notice when it comes up, and to then have the consciousness to make a different choice. And now, having had this experience of writing the book, I have a very potent lived experience of seeing how when I commit to doing something and it's aligned with higher purpose, how life comes in to support me. Like I don't actually need to make it happen,
Yeah.
right? So this is part of this like feeling of connectedness with life and taking your right place in this mandala or mosaic or whatever you want to call it, is that you don't have to do it all by yourself. That if you're aligned with the purpose, you
Yeah.
can call it life force, love, freedom, whatever. There's many words for it. I call it purpose. But when you're aligned with that, that everything conspires to help you. And
Yes, I
that gives
love
this
that.
deep sense of relaxation of, I don't need to be the achiever. I don't need to be successful. All I need to do is commit my energy to the right things. And then it just happens. People show up who are dying to support me and who are, being able to offer really high level professional services to me at a fraction of what the market cost would be, because they're just so inspired to be part of this movement that I'm sort of, I don't know if you could say figurehead for, or, the book mama for, but like, for example, with the audiobook, I have a woman who is a professional voiceover artist and sound engineer with a full recording studio here on the island, helping me for, I don't know, probably 20% of what I would pay if I were to rent a recording studio in San Francisco
Fabulous.
to make the audiobook, right? So I think it's almost too easy in the
Yeah.
sense that things are just laid out before you and you're just like, okay, here we go.
So I really want to talk on that, because that space, and I want to sort of, you're probably not old enough to remember overhead projectors, but you know what I'm talking about when I say an overhead
I
projector?
do know. I
Okay.
do know.
All right. So
I'm
there,
older than I look.
okay. All right. So I'm going to throw a lot of little images to you, which are going to make a pretty confused picture. Okay.
Okay.
But I want to talk about that brilliant mind that made it into Harvard and graduated Harvard. I want to talk about the immigrant child, child of immigrant parents who came and was supposed to be something and chose to be something else. I want to talk about the rebel that your dad was and the influence that that had on you. I want to these are all sheets, the plastic sheets that we're putting on, okay? I want to
Mm,
talk about that no 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 no, that resistance to this new idea that didn't feel right until it felt right, and then suddenly when it felt right. And then I want to put the sheet on that when you said yes, somehow all the doors opened up because you got out of your own way. My words, not yours. Okay, that resistance left and just opportunity came in. And I want
yeah.
to see if you can. I want to see if you can create pardon the like. Let's use an overhead projector, so I'm not a narcissist whoever I say in Mosaic so many times. But the mosaic picture of what those sheets on the overhead projector would look like, so that you could see somebody who's right where you have been, that has this brilliant mind, who knows that they can do anything but doesn't want to do stuff that they won't be great at, that sees opportunities come but says no, I don't want to do that, or whatever it is that happens. And I want to see if you can offer them just one thing right here in this moment that would allow them to pierce through all that, to get to the place where, when they, for me, the thing would be when they slide everything they believe to the right and
Mm,
just allow what's right in front of them to come to them without resistance, that miracles happen. What would it be for you? If the
mm.
question even makes sense. I'm counting on your brilliant mind to piece together this.
Yeah. You want me to sort of nuggetify what we just talked
Yeah,
about?
yeah. I want you to just put it right into one piece that I can chew on. Exactly. And let me guide you a little. I'm hoping that that is what the regenerative purpose might be of a person's life, when
Yeah.
they can get to that place where, so that all that we've talked about have not been in vain, that it all leads to what you're actually bringing into this world.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because for me, when I get into deeper layers of truth, I find that it's always sounds paradoxical when you speak it into words, right?
Yeah,
So um, it's basically two things that sound like they're opposites, but they're not actually, right?
love it.
So it's this idea that we can be deeply relaxed and at ease in how we show up in life, right? That there's, on the one hand, no striving or seeking or success making necessary. And on the other hand, it's absolutely necessary and urgent for us to show up fully and come alive and engage and participate. So that's the paradox, right? And that is, it is the essence of regenerative purpose of, yes, it's all happening. There are these global movements of transformation that are happening, and they're going to happen with or without us, as in me, Wendy, the small self. But then on the other hand, it's like, what is the most healing for me personally and what is most helpful for the world is for me to use my life as a vehicle to serve that movement, as one water molecule in the wave, right? So it's, yeah, that's it.
And I love this, because people probably don't won't know this about you if they don't know you. But one of the things that super impressed me about you is that you felt out of alignment with Amazon, which was a company that was distributing your book worldwide.
Mhm.
And because you felt out of alignment with it, you actually took action on it, as opposed to a lot of people who feel out of alignment and just say, well, what am I going to do? I have to have them because that's going to make my, I want to get my book out, or I want to do the things that I want to do. But you didn't do that. And
Yeah.
so when the knot between the paradox of those thoughts actually ties, and that
Mm.
spot where the knot is, not where the threads are that look different, I'm
Yeah.
trying to get what would be that knot of, is it that it's the integrity of the purpose that you have? Is it what is the thing that makes you able to go from Stanford to jungle? I mean, I'm sorry, Harvard to jungle,
Yeah.
from Amazon to no Amazon, to city San Francisco, to animal sounds all around you,
Yeah.
to traveling parent, to sort of living by your own flame, because there's so many people that feel that fire inside them but don't know what to do with it, or don't trust themselves to do it.
Yeah. Um, the short answer to that is there is no simple solution, and of
Okay.
course we all want to have simple solutions. And yeah, there's a lot of people who want to sell you a pill and give you a 5-step formula, or, whatever the thing, but it's much more complicated. Not complicated, it's more complex than that. It's simple actually, but there's many different layers to it. I mean, what I talk about in regenerative purpose is that there's 4 core qualities that we can cultivate in ourselves that allow this movement, and that these purpose qualities are all in relationship with each other and in a cyclical flow, and also in relationship with the world, right? It's a way of being in the world, um, that creates this virtuous cycle or feedback loop between the individual and the collective, and that it's not a single solution, right? So this is where I'm a bit counterculture in terms of the dominant narrative around purpose is around, you have to find your purpose, you have to figure out your purpose, you can diagnose it, create a 5-year plan around it, and then you've got a strategic, stepwise process to achieve it. I sort of, in a way, I'm calling bullshit on that model and saying it doesn't work like that. It's much more, at least my approach to it, my perspective on purpose, is that it's much more of an inner work process. And in a way, there's no, like I said, there's no simple answer because there's no end to the work. It's always happening through us, and it's always regenerating through us, right? That's why it's called regenerative purpose, is that it's alive. It's always growing, always dying. Different aspects, different dimensions of it are growing and dying. And the work actually becomes getting out of the way of it, right? Getting our small self out of the way of it.
Yeah.
Cleaning and clearing our system of all the conditioning and the programming, the resistance, the fears, and then cultivating these qualities in us that allow purpose to flow through us.
I love that. In my book, The Mosaic, I talk, one of the characters is the trash man. And the
Mm.
trash man is one of my most loved characters, because the trash man comes every to our house now where we live. He comes every Monday morning, and we put outside all the stuff that we no longer want, and he just kindly puts it into his truck, grinds it up, and drives it off, and gives us back our can to fill it up next time.
Yeah.
And it no one would say a trash man is the spiritual character, but to me, he's the most spiritual character. And what I realized is my life, from the time I was 4 years old and watched the trash man collect the trash in Philadelphia, where I was born,
Mm.
till now, I always wanted to be a trash man, and I realized I am a trash man.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I take all the things that are blocking people from having what they want, and the emotions and feelings and pains and sufferings and belief systems, and I ask them just to put it in the trash can. And if they're ready to, we'll put it in the truck and drive it away, and then we'll come back next week and do it again and see how
Yeah.
that feels, right? So that they can just continually empty themselves. So if you were to say what regenerative purpose is. What in a paragraph. I don't want to give you one or two sentences, but so you can say in a paragraph.
Yeah.
Your purpose of writing that book is that when someone finishes reading it or goes through that process or reads it, the hope is that they will blank.
Mm. Be more relaxed and engaged in taking their place in the world.
Beautiful.
That's about as simple as I can make it.
I love it. I love it, and it surprises me because sometimes, like when I hear you speak, because I've listened to some of your stuff, you explain such difficult concepts sometimes, and it's. But I love when you're simple like that because it's so easy, right? It's so perfectly easy for someone to understand that. When you look out in the world, and this is the final question I always ask, when you look out in the world, at the world you see, not only in the jungle around you, but in the world that borders that jungle. Is this the world you always dreamed that you would want to hand over to your children and your children's children?
No,
Okay.
we have a
So,
lot of work to do.
so either through the book that you're doing or the work that you would want to do, what would be one thing that if people would do it, the next time we saw each other and I asked you that question, you would say, we're a lot closer than we were the first time you asked me that question because people are doing this one thing. What would you recommend they do?
Yeah, when you think about life, it comes down to two things: space and movement. You talked about one of them already, which is clearing space, right? As you said, taking out the garbage. That's attending to the space, making sure it's clean and clear. The other thing is the movement needs to be infused with love. And what that means for me is devotional decision making. So you talked about my decision to leave Amazon as an example of that. So remembering that every single choice that every single person makes a difference, So I don't need to single-handedly take down Amazon. But
Right.
when I take my energy back from Amazon and I share that with other people, it influences them and it creates a ripple effect, right? And so it's helping other people become more conscious of, hey, maybe there are some business practices that Amazon's engaged in that I don't want to support either. And they take their energy back. And it creates this wave, right? So yeah, it's about devotional decision making, right? So once you've cleared the space, it's about bringing that love and devotion into every choice and every decision that you make every day.
Wendy, I'm sure people are going to want to know how to get in touch with you or how to get your book. How would they do that? What's the best place for them to go? And we'll list all your places in the show notes. But why don't you just say where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, regenerativepurpose.com will take you to a page that you can get my book, not on Amazon. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm Hey Wendy May, pretty much everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Medium.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming and being on here. And I want to thank our listeners for being here. Is there anything that I haven't given you the opportunity to say that that you feel like, oh boy, I wish I would have said that on
No, I feel complete.
there. Okay, great. I just want to summarize 1 minute because it's what I do for all the guests that come. For those of you who are listening, I hope you will go to regenerativepurpose.com. I hope you felt a little bit of what I felt when I first met Wendy and what I felt in the conversation. For me, it's almost awkward, and I'm a very purpose driven person. I believe that I live by my integrity and do that, but it's almost awkward to have a conversation with someone who has such clean intent. And that clean intent is so beautifully shown in some of the decisions she makes. And she's recovering in all of it. It's not like she's claims to be somewhere perfect or doing it. But it's such an honor to meet people in this world today that put integrity and purpose above just about everything else. And that they understand that even our purpose is regenerative. Um, that it recreates itself. It's born and it passes to make room for something else to come. And even in the process of just letting it go and allowing something new and fresh to come in, that regenerates us. And that regeneration is what gives us life again. And we so often get caught in doing the same thing over and over again. We just stop questioning the decisions we make. But Wendy's belief of just her one simple request, if you could make conscious choices that would give you that would fill you with your integrity and be integrity driven in the life that you live, why not make those conscious choices? Why not now step up and live a life that's in alignment with who you are and the integrity that you want to bring to this world? And if we were to do that, what would that do to the world that we live in? One by one. Someone called it the butterfly effect. You know, when one butterfly moves his wings, it creates a wind that creates, hurricanes in lands far away because it starts to. And I hope you'll get in touch with her. I really do, and I hope you'll read her book, and I hope you'll give feedback here, both here on this podcast and on her site as well, as to what you feel, and engage with her. This is a when a brilliant mind meets a clean, pure heart, something exquisite happens. And that's what I think you have in front of her, that when she gets a little more polished, not changing her or doing anything different, but when she just allows that force of those two powerful things to come, I believe that Wendy May is a name you will remember hearing at this point and say, I heard an interview with her before everybody knew about her. And I hope that to be the case, because I think what she's bringing to the world really needs to receive. Thank you again, Wendy, for coming. Thank you, people who come often to the podcast. I hope you will share this with your friends. I hope you will share Wendy with your friends. I hope you'll buy 10 copies of her book and give it out to your friends. And I hope that if you like it, you'll rate it, review it, and you'll come back often and share this message and this movement that she's doing, that I'm doing, with everyone you know. Until next time, thank you again, and we'll see you soon.